This is a reading from the Notebooks by Maria Valtorta, 1943, December the 14th, the second glorious mystery. Mary says, "There are special forms of generosity whose fragrance is emitted only by the souls that are one with my Lord, and whose perfume is appreciated only by God or by those already living in the kingdom of God. It is generosity to be able to give up freedom and enclose oneself in a convent, prohibiting for oneself those human joys which God has permitted and my Son has blessed, because they come within the domain of the designs for creation, and, by means of creatures, perpetuate the Creator's work. The eternal source of new spirits, the Father creates souls in heaven, seeds destined to produce seed. They are clothed in a body, and, becoming male and female, in the union of two bodies in one, create new robes on earth for the new souls destined to come down to earth and people it with God's creatures. There is no greater joy, after the joy of loving the Lord, than to be the mother of one's own child, and to say, 'I have shaped you, I have nourished and borne you, I have given you my blood and my milk. The flesh of the two bodies is mine, and my thought is yours, because you are the thought and purpose of your mother.' There is a higher motherhood, but it is no longer human, and is already comprehended in the great, unsurpassable, and foremost joy of all, that of loving the Lord, for it is total love for our most holy Lord, who has us love creatures to the point of becoming mothers for them, ready to give them life through our pains, and for the purpose of increasing the glory of the Eternal by incrementing the citizens of His kingdom. It is generosity to offer yourselves as victims for the world. It is a great form of generosity because it makes you like my Jesus, the innocent, holy victim consumed by love. But there is an even greater form of generosity, heroic generosity in its global heroicness. God, great in a way which is incomprehensible to you, compensates generous souls with rivers of delights. He communicates himself to them in spiritual contacts. He grants lights which are words, and words which are lights. He grants forms of vitality which are rest, and rest on his heart which is vitality. He becomes the support of the generous soul, and unites himself to her when he sees that the creature's generosity has been so violent as not to measure her strength, in such fashion that the creature stoops, like my Son, under an exorbitant weight which she does not refuse, but asks only that it be lifted from her for a moment, so as to be able to get up again and proceed to the peak, for it is in total sacrifice that she knows she will reach joy. Well then, the most heroic heroicness in sacrifice is when a creature pushes her love to the capacity for being generous, even in renouncing this comfort of having the help and sensible presence of God. Maria, I experienced it. I know, I can instruct you in this science of sacrifice, for this is no longer simple instruction, it is science. Whoever reaches this point is not a pupil, but a teacher in the science which is the most difficult, being able to give up not only freedom, health, motherhood, and human love, but being able to give up God's comfort, which makes all renunciation bearable. And not just this, but it makes renunciation sweet and wished for. One then drinks the bitterness which my Son drank, and knows the solitude which surrounded my heart from the morning of the Ascension until my Assumption. It is the perfection of suffering. And yet, Maria, in my suffering I was happy. There was no egoism in me, but only inflamed charity. As by ascending degrees, I had been able to carry out all the offerings and acts of separation, always maintaining awareness in my spirit that the offering and separation which were transfixing it were accomplishing the will and increasing the glory of God, my Lord, and later detached myself from my Son for the sake of his preparation for the mission, his preaching, his capture, his death, and his burial. All things whose brief duration I was aware of, I was thus able to smile and bless him, without taking my heart's tears into account. On the first dawn of the 40th day of his glorious life, when, without witnesses, as on the morning of the resurrection, he came to give me his kiss before ascending into heaven, I, the mother, was losing the Son, who with his presence gave me ineffable joy. But I, his first believer, knew that for him the stay in the inimical world was ending, and that if it could no longer harm him, for he was now beyond the reach of man's deceits, it did not, however, cease to be hostile to him. That the heavens should open to receive the Son into glory, who was returning to the Father after pain, that the triune love should be reunited without further need for separations, that I might even lack light and breath because the world was no longer inhabited by my Jesus, and his breath was no longer in the air to make it holy, but that he, after having been the Son of Man, should again become the Son of God, robed in his divine glory eternally. It was my last fiat, nor was it less prompt and generous than the one in Nazareth. Always fiat to the desires of God, both for him to come to us, to become part of us, and for him to withdraw, to ascend and prepare the dwelling for us in his kingdom, to surround him with love when he is with us, to live by love looking wherever he is, to remind him that his handmaid loves him, and to await his smile of invitation in order to die in a rush of joy, which is the luminous beginning of the radiant, eternal day of paradise. After having received, served, and listened to him while he is with us, to live without diminishing love to the slightest degree, because he is no longer visibly present to us, to offer this renunciation for his glory and for our brothers and sisters, so that our concern will be changed into divine company in them, and silence, which is now our faintness, will turn into the word for so many who need to be evangelized by the word. We have memories, Maria. Others have nothing. We have the certainty that he is working to prepare the dwelling for us. Others look at time as a river whose mouth is nothingness. I say because I associate with you with my thoughts at that time. Let us make, and along with you, the generous who want to reach the peaks of generosity, this renunciation too, if you are asked to, so that your treasure will be the treasure of many others, and the spiritually indigent will be robed in that light, and the spiritually illiterate in that science, which never cease, once they are infused, to be alive and active, and which goodness has granted to his beloved, to make them his chosen ones.